Good morning, everyone. It was a long time ago, but I was here BC, before COVID, on one of the times that Pastor Bob was away. And now here I am again in what we all hope is LC, late COVID. And maybe I can come back again when we are completely AC, after COVID. That's our hope, isn't it? That's our prayer. My name's Jim Pfeiffer. I'm glad to be here. Thank you, Liz, for the introduction. I work at St. Vincent, at Ascension St. Vincent. If you've ever had a bad experience at our hospital, I'm really sorry. That was not my fault. And if you've had a good experience at our hospital, we were praying for you in the spiritual care department. Well, we're going to look at two scriptures this morning in our scripture time, and one is one of the readings from the lexical readings for Mark 16, or Mark 6 rather, and it really fits quite well with what I want to talk to you about from the book of Habakkuk. But let's first read from Mark 6, 14 through 29. Mark 6, reading in verse 14. For those of you who are able to look at a pew Bible, it's page 40. Actually, it's page 49, so not sure what pew Bible. Oh, I have the large print edition, I beg your pardon. Mark 6, verse 14. King Herod heard of it, for Jesus' name had become known. Some were saying John the Baptizer has been raised from the dead, and for this reason these powers are at work in him. But others said, it's Elijah. And others said, is a prophet like one of the prophets of old. But when Herod heard of it, he said, John, whom I beheaded, has been raised. For Herod himself had sent men who arrested John, bound him, and put him in prison on account of Herodias, his brother Philip's wife, because Herod had married her. For John had been telling Herod, it's not lawful for you to have your brother's wife. And Herodias had a grudge against him, that is John, and wanted to kill him. But she could not, for Herod feared John, knowing that he was a righteous and holy man, and he protected him. When he heard him, he was greatly perplexed, and yet he liked to listen to him. But an opportunity came when Herod, on his birthday, gave a banquet for the courtiers and officers and for the leaders of Galilee. When his daughter Herodias came in and danced, she pleased Herod and his guests. And the king said to the girl, ask me for whatever you wish, and I will give it. And he solemnly swore to her, whatever you ask me, I will give it to you, even up to half of my kingdom. She went out and said to her mother, what should I ask for? She replied, the head of John the Baptizer. Immediately she rushed back into the king and requested, I want you to give me at once the head of John the Baptist on a platter. The king was deeply grieved, yet out of regard for his oaths and for his guests, he did not want to refuse her. Immediately the king sent a soldier of the guard with orders to bring John's head. He went and beheaded him in the prison, brought his head on a platter and gave it to the girl. Then the girl gave it to her mother. When his disciples heard about it, they came and took his body and laid it in a tomb. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. And now turning to the Old Testament prophet Habakkuk. And I like to say when I'm preaching from one of the minor prophets, this passage, as you look for it, is in the clean part of your Bibles. The part where the pages are probably still stuck together. It's not a place that we go very often, but rich words from this prophet this morning, Habakkuk chapter 1. And then 4 verses from chapter 2. From chapter 1, the oracle that the prophet Habakkuk saw. O Lord, how long shall I cry for help and you will not listen? Or cry to you, violence, and you will not save? Why do you make me see wrongdoing and look at trouble? Destruction and violence are before me, strife and contention arise. So the law becomes slack and justice never prevails. The wicked surround the righteous, therefore judgment comes forth perverted. And then flipping the page to chapter 2, Again, the first 4 verses. I will stand at my watchpost and station myself on the rampart. I will keep watch to see what he will say to me and what he will answer concerning my complaint. Then the Lord answered me. The Lord said, write the vision, make it plain on the tablets so that a runner may read it. For there is still a vision for the appointed time. It speaks of the end and does not lie. If it seems to tarry, wait for it. It will surely come. It will not delay. Look at the proud. Their spirit is not right in them, but the righteous live by their faith. This too is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. And let us pray. Gracious God, we give you thanks for these passages from your word. We ask that we might understand, at least in some measure more fully, what your will is for us, a little bit more about you. May we, Lord God, have a sense of what you would have us to do this day in these brief periods that we're upon this earth. For we ask it in Jesus' name. Amen. I have always been a news junkie. If you remember way back before cable news, back when TV news was only on at 6 and 11, you remember those days? I would listen to the news on the radio between those times. That was the only way you could get the news between, if it wasn't 6 or 11, the only thing you could do is listen to the news on the hour on Mutual Broadcasting System or CBS or one of the stations that carried the news. We lived overseas for some years, and I bought a shortwave radio back in those days, back in the 80s, so I could listen to BBC and Voice of America. And in fact, it was on Voice of America that I learned for the first time of the Challenger disaster. It seems so quaint almost to realize that I didn't know, I had no awareness of that disaster, the Challenger explosion in 1985, until I waited for the news on Voice of America at the top of the hour. But anyway, I've always been a news junkie, but in recent years, I've been turning it off. I've just been turning it off more and more. Not completely, but I'm just taking in less news than I used to. Why? Because I'm just sick of the bad news. This bad news, these stories of injustice, of unfairness, of cruelty, it's just more than I can bear, frankly. More than I'm willing to listen to. To be really honest, it overwhelms me, fills me with sadness and anger, and I just have to turn it off. I'm sad for the people who are suffering, and I'm angry at those who are causing the suffering. You know the stories as well as I do. People who are languishing in the world's jails who shouldn't be, and other people who are walking freely who themselves should be in jail. Children set upon by predators, women beaten by partners, entire people groups being overrun, kidnapped, mistreated, made to flee, made into slaves in some cases, and killed, of course, in others, simply because they're a particular ethnicity or religion. And maybe you could name the people groups I'm thinking about: Rohingyas, Uyghurs, Kurds. It seems like every decade it's a new group that's being persecuted and made to flee. The powerful squeezing the powerless. Not even pets are safe, it seems, from the mean-spiritedness that is so common. Where is justice? Where is it? Where is it? And of course, this didn't just start when I decided to turn off my radio. This has been around, well, since time immemorial. It's really always been this way. It's just that we didn't have the cameras and the microphones to record it all like we do now. The prophet's complaint about injustice is the same as mine. It's been, 26, 27, 2,800 years since Habakkuk prophesied, but his complaint can be echoed today. It is echoed today by you and by me. Why is there so much injustice in the world? Again, these verses from our reading. Destruction and violence are before me. Strife and contention arise. The law becomes slack. Justice doesn't prevail. The wicked surround the righteous, and judgment comes forth perverted. Is not this the complaint of anyone with a sense of right and wrong? Now, let me just parenthetically say here that I, and maybe you too, are most outraged when it's my justice that's being denied. When it's me who is not being treated fairly. When injustice is imposed upon me, that's when I can really find my inner outrage and my vigor against what's wrong with this or that person in authority. But really, if my outrage is only acute when I am the victim, that puts me in some bad company. I think about Nuremberg. Some of the Nazi perpetrators of genocide, one of the greatest acts of injustice ever, some of those men claimed that the charges against them were unjust, that they were only doing what they were ordered to do. Now, I need to nurture my feelings of injustice, not just when I am unfairly treated, but when others are as well. I must be outraged at the sufferings of nameless persons from the other side of the world, just as I am outraged for myself. Why? Because injustice is global. In Habakkuk's world, the injustice was about a powerful and violent nation called Babylon, which was running rampant across the earth, enslaving people, committing atrocities, and all the while prospering while they did it. That was what made it so galling to Habakkuk. It just felt too much to him that the whole world seemingly was under the thumb of this evil empire. It's just not fair, he said to God. And justice isn't just global, it's also personal. If we could line up here in a sort of confessional, not confessing our sins, but telling our stories, there's no one in the sanctuary who's not been a victim of some form of injustice, some form of unfairness. Sometimes it's easy to see who the perpetrator is, who the person is who's at fault, a government official, an employer, a person in power, a thief, an abuser. But other times, we're victims of seemingly blind, cruel fate. We can't really put our finger on any person who has perpetrated this thing against us. We really look up to God and say, why'd you let this happen? I've worked in hospitals for the past 15 years, and they are places, as some of you well know, maybe too well, that they're places with so much sadness, so much anguish at the random cruelties of accidents, of illnesses, of chronic conditions. So much suffering in hospitals. It's just amazing that we can walk through corridors and say, behind that door, I know there are 30 people who are in misery, and 30 of their relatives who are in the waiting room looking for good news. The last 17 or 18 months, of course, have filled our minds with too many images of ICUs, image after image of persons in disbelieving grief that their husband, their sister, their dear friend has died of COVID. In the last 17 or 18 days, our minds have been filled with similar images of persons whose family members went to bed in their condo and died without ever being able to wake up, or died miserably as they realized something terrible was happening. It's often not fair. It's just not right. And what makes this all the more painful for Habakkuk is that God does not seem to be doing anything about it. God does not seem to be doing anything at all to relieve the suffering of God's people. And it just doesn't add up for him. It doesn't add up for what he knows of God. That's the stunning part of it all. Habakkuk knows that God is good. He says as much in the prophecy. He knows the Torah. He knows that God is good. He knows the teaching that God is love. He knows that God doesn't support injustice. He knows that God demands justice from God's own people. God supports goodness. God supports light. Habakkuk didn't know the words yet of James' first epistle, but he would have agreed with it. Every good and perfect gift comes from above, from the Father of lights, with whom there is no variableness nor shifting shadow. We know that passage. We believe it. We thank God for it. Again, from the passage. How long shall I cry for help and you won't listen, or cry to you violence and you will not save? Why do you make me see wrongdoing and look at trouble? There's exasperation there, but there's also some philosophical reasoning. How is it that you, being good, allow this to happen? Can we identify with this? I'm sure that John the Baptist's disciples could. They knew that he was someone special, that he was, as he described it, a forerunner of the one who had been promised. He went around preaching righteousness, doing good, preaching good, and then he gets beheaded? What's that about? Aren't those who do good supposed to be rewarded? Can we identify this with this? You and I. Again, if we were to sit here and have a conversation one-on-one, could you say to me, yeah, I kind of have wondered about what God was doing that time in my life when it just didn't add up. Maybe that time for you is right now. We've been taught about God's love. We learned about it. These children learn about it. We've experienced God's goodness. When things went well, we said thank you to God because it seemed like the right thing to do, because we believed it was God who had blessed us with that good job or that good medical test after we had been given bad news. We believed it was God, but then things didn't go well. And maybe they're not going well for you right now, and maybe God doesn't seem to be doing anything about it. And so Habakkuk posed his question to God and waited for the answer. I'll stand at my watchpost, Habakkuk said, and station myself on the rampart. I'll keep watch to see what he will say to me and what he will answer concerning my complaint. I can envision Habakkuk there either indignant, I can envision him standing there in tears, I can envision him standing there exhausted from his weighing of this dilemma. Good God, bad things? How does that work? And then the answer comes. It's in verses 2-4. Don't look for a panacea, but let me read it to you. Then the Lord answered me and said, write the vision, make it plain on tablets so that a runner may read it, for there is still a vision for the appointed time. It speaks of the end and does not lie. If it seems to tarry, wait for it. It will surely come. It will not delay. Look at the proud. Their spirit is not right in them, but the righteous, Habakkuk, live by faith. Well, if we were looking again for a panacea or a presto, it's all better, that's not there in those verses. It's really not satisfactory in terms of immediately removing the dissonance and the dilemma. Of course, if it had removed the dissonance and dilemma, I wouldn't be preaching about it today because it all would have been solved. So how is this an answer? It's an answer, again, not in the sense of voila, it's all gone, but rather in the sense of giving us a way to think and to act in this imperfect world. I believe the first thing God says to Habakkuk in this vision is that there's a plan. There is a vision for the appointed time, he says. We don't know how all this works, and I am the last person who knows how it works. I have been sitting with those people who didn't understand why their little child is gone, or their husband or their wife or their spouse, and I don't know what to say. And so I don't give them an answer because there's not one to give. But God says there's a plan. I know that those who seem so certain about God's plans have repeatedly been proved wrong, and I don't want to join their company. Nevertheless, the message of Scripture and the belief of the church have always been that history is not without purpose. Even my life, full of pain as it may be, is not without purpose. It is moving toward a good end. We believe that by faith, not because we've experienced that good end. And some of us don't experience it all the days that God has given us. And yet, we can close our eyes in death and believe that there is a good end. There is a plan. And if there is a plan, that means that we can live a life of purpose. How? By working for justice and calling out injustice. if God really is good, and if God really is fair, and if God really is love, and if God really is these things that we believe God to be, then what better life to live but a life that opposes itself always to injustice wherever it rears its head, and always is the voice for righteousness and goodness, and always is the exemplar of love. As the Lord said to Habakkuk, the righteous shall live by their faith, not because they see the results always of their outspokenness for justice, but because they know it's the right thing to do. They're living by faith. What does that look like? What does it look like to live by faith? Maybe it looks like Father Greg Boyle. Have you ever heard of him? Father Boyle is a Jesuit priest who started Homeboy Industries in LA. It's a ministry that has rescued hundreds of young men and women, gang members, from lives of violence and death, and given them purpose. Father Boyle reminds everyone he sees that these kids are humans, made in God's image, who are loved by God and deserve our love. And the reason that they are committing atrocities is because they haven't been loved. And so Boyle says, I'm going to love them. And I'm going to see what changes in them, and many of them have been changed. And you and I live lives of faith like Boyle, maybe not on that maximal scale, but at our own levels. Live lives of faith whenever we take even a small stand for justice, for peace, for fairness, and for equality. And then too, friends, the last thing I think we get from this whole book of Habakkuk, not only is there a plan and not only can we live for purpose, but there is our posture in the face of injustice. That's really where it comes down to it, for me at least. What should my posture be? I believe Habakkuk models it for us, and it's a mixture of exasperation and hope. I think we miss the first half of that a lot of times. We think that we must always be hopeful and positive and dignified and never feel like we can say to God, what? But Habakkuk models something different. Our posture in the face of injustice is to be a mixture of exasperation and hope. The prophet models that it's not illegitimate to complain to God. It's not unchristian to say, what are you doing? Please stop. That's not wrong. I've had to say that to so many people in the emergency department. Yes, you can weep, and yes, you can swear at God. You've just lost your beloved. Do it. Exasperation is part of our posture many times in our lives. It's not less Christian to ask why and to ask it with desperation. God gets that. Jesus gets that. Jesus asked why from the cross itself, for goodness sake. Surely I can from wherever I am. But we must always come back to this posture of hope, even of expectancy. God said to Habakkuk, wait for it. That is, bend toward the promise. For in the end, whenever that is, and however it happens, and whatever it looks like, the kingdom of righteousness and peace will flourish. It really will. In the words of this very prophet, Habakkuk 2:14, the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. Friends, Habakkuk's name means embrace. How ironic. I pray that we'll take that upon ourselves and feel the embrace of God. Feel the Habakkuk of God in whatever season of life we're experiencing. As they sang a little earlier, hold on to me. Hold on to me. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Lord, we ask that you be with these dear people. Whatever some of them are suffering, maybe only you know. But give them your grace and your strength. Give us vision to know that there is an outcome. And meanwhile, help us to live righteous lives and stand up for those who are treated unfairly. For it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.